The story begins with our hero holding someone, telling him that he is the last one now. He then smiled confidently and, using his magic, restrained the man by his neck. The man accused him of hiding exceptional skills that a mere fixer could not possess. The hero began to question him about the grimoire, a powerful magic book, pointing out that the Deculin family would not mobilize all these forces just to chase a single stray dog, describing the family members as scum, who multiply and spread like rabid dogs. The man admitted he didn't know how to use the grimoire, but the hero deduced from their relentless pursuit of him over this distance that the book must possess great value. The man demanded he hand over the grimoire immediately. In return, he offered to intercede for him to return to his work as a fixer, even using the demeaning term hunting dog. The hero scoffed at this offer, sarcastically wondering what authority a mere manager of fixers could have to make such promises. He then lifted him with his magic, asking if he had any last words before he died. Suddenly, a third person appeared on the scene, a man exuding a powerful aura of evil energy, who calmly greeted them. This newcomer revealed his identity, announcing he was Baharan von Deculin, the head of the ruling magical family of the eastern continent, the Deculin. The fixer manager was stunned. This was the first time he had seen the family head face to face, despite having spent decades serving them as a fixer. Baharan was a legendary figure, known as the most powerful sorcerer in the family's history. The hero wondered to himself what kind of man this person might be. Baharan addressed the hero, telling him to hand over the grimoire, promising they would talk afterward. However, the hero met him with a rude and shocking response, telling him that he was pissing him off, and accused him of trying to steal his hard-won spoils. Baharan met this insolence with a sarcastic laugh. At that moment, the hero regretted not devouring the wyvern he had seen earlier when he had the chance, as he now realized that the aura emanating from the family head was overwhelming and stronger than anything he had ever faced before. Baharan explained to the hero that the easiest option was to kill him and retrieve the grimoire by force, but he offered him an alternative. He asked him to hand over the book and return to the service of Deculin, and in return, all his crimes would be forgiven. Baharan praised the hero's combat talent, admitting he regretted not realizing this talent sooner. He was impressed that a filthy rat from the slums could master the trivial skills of fixers and bring them to such an advanced level. He then tried to tempt him with a vision of a bright future, wondering how high a sharp blade like him could soar if carried by the wings of Deculin, and what greatness he could add to the family name. He concluded his offer by inviting him to stand by his side and make history together. The hero agreed to Baharan's offer, but he set one condition. With a cunning smile, the hero demanded that Baharan give him his seat as the head of the family, and only then could they negotiate. He then turned to Baharan, reminding him that he had been watching his battles, and mockingly asked how many people had died because of the magic move he was still applying to the exhausted fixer manager. This challenge angered Baharan, who warned the hero that this was the way he chose to play, and that this choice could lead to his death. The hero acknowledged that this was absolutely true, but he responded with an even greater challenge, inviting Baharan to measure the gap in power between them himself. Baharan accepted the challenge, declaring that he would discipline him first. Baharan began to launch an attack that the hero dodged with great difficulty, and before he could catch his breath, he was surprised by another magic circle that appeared suddenly before him. Realizing that this was the true power of the head of the Deculin family, a power that left no exploitable opening, Baharan reminded the hero of his previous challenge, asserting that some things do not need to be tested, like the vast chasm in power that separated them. He then began to launch another attack. That caused a massive explosion. From amidst the smoke, Baharan asked the hero if he had changed his mind about negotiating, telling him he would let him live, but just barely. The hero responded by asking if Baharan would accept him if he bowed his head now and returned to the shadow of Deculin. But he quickly answered his own question with a defiant shout, "No way!" The hero rose forcefully, blood covering his face, declaring he was tired of eating dog food. He unleashed an attack of blue lightning, shouting angrily and questioning who would be content to become a dog again, as a fancy collar and a big house don't change the fact of the matter. Baharan called him a fool and prepared to unleash an overwhelming power. The hero was stunned by the sight before him, as a massive storm of purple lightning filled the sky. In that moment, he realized something. He finally understood why, on that day, he had looked up at the sky and seen that wyvern soaring with absolute freedom. The reason for his gaze was his suffering and his deep desire to attain that freedom. Despite the overwhelming attack, the hero managed to stand firm. Baharan looked at him with admiration, admitting he thought the attack would kill him, and then asked if he now felt the difference in their power. Still standing, the hero acknowledged Baharan's disgusting power. Baharan asked if he was ready to talk properly now, and asked him to finish the story he couldn't finish before. The hero wondered if Baharan wanted him to go back to being a fixer again, but Baharan corrected him, explaining that he did not mean the position of a fixer. Baharan revealed his true and surprising offer, for the hero to become the head of one of the families affiliated with the Deculan family. The hero was shocked by this offer. He thought about how the Deculan family, whose authority rivaled that of the imperial power, was offering him the headship of one of its loyal families. The hero looked at the grimoire in his possession and asked Baharan if this book was his goal from the beginning. Baharan replied that the hero was still underestimating himself, insisting that his desire was for the hero himself, and that the grimoire came second. Baharan saw that the hero was starting to consider the offer, and he promised that accepting it would erase all his past sins, and only glory with the Deculan family would await him. But unexpectedly, the hero began to pour his energy into the grimoire with the intention of destroying it. Baharan asked him in shock what he was doing, to which the hero replied sarcastically that he could have it after it turned to ash. Baharan threatened the hero that he would never die peacefully, but the hero silenced him and told him to listen. The hero explained that fixers don't care about money, but he took this grimoire because it was priceless. He then revealed the dark secret behind it, wondering if Baharan knew about the fixers who were devoured by the young Deculan master using forbidden magic from this book. That scoundrel had devoured the hero's comrades, and the Deculan family covered up the crime. Baharan asked contemptuously if this was all for revenge, noting that the lives of stray dogs are cheap. The hero replied that his motive was not just revenge, he wanted to fulfill his comrades' dreams, and that required money. He also wanted to ensure he wouldn't go back to living in a doghouse after retirement. After hearing everything, Baharan declared that he had heard the hero's last words. He unleashed his final attack, the azure flame of Deculan, an eternal fire that never goes out, and told the hero to regret his choice in the depths of this hell. As the flames consumed him, the hero rejected the idea of regret, shouting that death was better than being Deculan's dog again, and he felt a freedom he hadn't felt in a long time. His last thoughts were that he regretted nothing, and that if he were to be reborn, he would seize his freedom and achieve his true revenge. He was then surprised by what happened. Everything froze as if time had stopped. The grimoire appeared and glowed brightly. Then something strange happened. The hero found himself in another place, wondering how he had survived after being on the verge of burning to death. He felt that something was not right, and the place looked familiar, as if he had returned to the past. Then he remembered he was in the black and white zone, the place where he had struggled to survive daily before becoming a fixer. He realized the incredible truth. He had gone back in time. He wondered what in the world was going on. As he found himself in his younger body, he was sure he had returned to the past, but he noticed that a certain mark was still on his body. Although he didn't understand how, he deduced that the grimoire had done something to cause this return. He remembered that the head of the Deculan family coming himself to take the book proved how important it was. The hero decided that this return to the past was a good thing in any case. He made sure it wasn't a dream. The events seemed too real, and the foul smell of sewage in the place confirmed to him that he was alive. He felt optimistic that this was an opportunity to achieve great success regardless of what he would do. But he wondered what achieving great success meant. He remembered that he once had a dream his comrades also shared, and it was the same reason that pushed him to decide to retire. He began to recall a conversation he had with one of his comrades named Aster. In that memory, Aster told him that they were just homeless people in the black and white zone, lacking clothes, food, and education, and asked him which of these was the worst for him. The hero answered that the lack of food was the worst, but Aster corrected him. After a look of annoyance at the stupidity of the answer appeared on his face, he explained that not receiving an education was the most painful thing. If they had been properly trained and educated, they would not have fallen into the hands of the nobles who enslaved them. Aster revealed his dream after retirement, which was to build a library, a place where anyone, regardless of their wealth, status, or gender, could read books freely. As for the hero, his dream was to go even further. He wanted to build a towering spire, for no particular reason other than that he loved high things. He planned to fill this tower with every book he could find. Most importantly, he would place the secret manual of the Deculan family at the entrance of the first floor, so that everyone could get it, whether they were vagrants from the black and white zone, sons of nobles, or even the butchers in the market. Just imagining seeing those techniques, which the Deculan family considered more precious than their lives, being available to everyone made him feel ecstatic. He admitted that the problem was how to obtain those techniques, but he decided to leave that for his future self to worry about. His ultimate goal was to spread the secrets of Deculin as widely as possible, which would lead to their complete collapse. Suddenly his dreams were interrupted by a powerful kick to his face. An angry young man appeared and yelled at him for not staying where he was told, then began to kick him repeatedly. At first the hero was shocked by this sudden attack, but he quickly gathered his experience as a fixer who had fought countless battles. He managed to block one of the kicks, which surprised the attacker. The hero calmly told him that he had hit him 7 times. Then, with a sharp gaze, he declared that it was time to pay him back tenfold. The hero prepared for a counterattack, while fear appeared on the attacker's face, and the loud sound of breaking bones was heard. The hero was surprised to find that it was his own hand that was broken, wondering how that happened. The other boy began to scold him angrily for daring to hit someone older than him, calling him crazy. Although the hero managed to land a blow, the young man threw him to the ground and continued to beat him. While the hero's body ached, it was his heart that ached more. The hero took the opportunity and tripped the attacker, who lost his balance and fell into a sewage canal. The hero saw this as a chance to escape. The attacker got up, coughing, and asked the hero where he thought he was going. But the hero replied that he was not running away. In fact, what he was doing was a tactical retreat. He decided to remember his attacker's face and to keep the 57 blows he received in his heart, reminding himself that he was an experienced fixer who didn't know how to give up. After moving away, he realized his situation was bad. His wrist was sprained from just throwing one punch, which made him feel sorry for the weakness of his current body. He sat down, defeated, and decided that he had to forget about the tower for now, and that the priority was to fix and strengthen this weak body. Suddenly, a small white-haired child appeared before him and asked if he was hungry. The hero asked if he knew him, and the child replied that he didn't. The hero analyzed the child's clothes. Although they were worn out, they were originally expensive, so he concluded that he was most likely the son of a noble who had lost in a power struggle and fled here. He saw him as a ticking time bomb to be avoided. The child introduced himself, saying his name was Damien and his mother's name was Bianca. The hero felt he was learning things he shouldn't know, so he asked Damien if he was a bit slow on the uptake. Damien then innocently told him that his mother was dead, and the hero felt sorry for him. He replied that he didn't have a father either, so he was the winner, then tried to shoo him away. The hero decided it was best to get away from this ticking time bomb before it became more troublesome. But when he tried to leave, Damien told him he would come with him. The hero refused and thought about hitting him to make him go away. Damien noticed the hero's injured wrist and asked if it hurt, then offered to help. He placed his hand over the hero's hand, and a powerful healing light appeared, which astonished the hero. He immediately realized that this was not just an ordinary healing hand. He recognized the secret technique. It was the light of healing, a special technique of the fallen noble Blandu family, which was destroyed by the Deculin family. The hero's instincts as a professional fixer screamed. He realized he had just gotten himself into something very nasty and dangerous. He wondered why a child from the Blandu family was in this place, as their family was supposed to still be in a good position at this point in time. He repeated the name Damien in his mind, as Damien asked if he was calling him. Suddenly he remembered something. He had remembered a crucial piece of information. Someone from the Blandu lineage with different colored eyes. He recognized the identity of the child in front of him. It was the monster of Blandu, Damien von Blandu, the madman who doesn't die even if he is killed. The hero was in a state of shock that he couldn't comprehend. His memory took him back to the past, to a time before his decline, when he was still working as a fixer. He remembered a mission he was sent on by order of the Deculin family to the lands of the Blandu family. At that time, he and his comrades were grumbling, wondering why they were being called for a mission that the Blandu family should have been able to handle themselves. One of the comrades told them about rumors of a monster in the Blandu lands, a monster that was said to have killed dozens. They wondered if this monster was a ghoul or something like that. But what he saw was not a ghoul. He saw a human tearing another human to shreds. This human was Damien, who was laughing madly as he fought, continuously using the Blandu family's healing magic to keep fighting. He was a deranged butcher who wouldn't die even after death. The memory ends and the hero returns to his present, where Damien sits before him, an innocent child looking at ants with interest. The hero is still in shock, unable to reconcile the image of the brutal killer in his memory with the child in front of him. He wonders why the direct heir of the Blandu family, the only son of the Lord, is in such a miserable place. Damien interrupts his thoughts by talking about food. He tells him enthusiastically that they should eat, quoting his mother that eating well prevents illness, and concludes that the hero is sick because he doesn't eat. The hero agrees with his logic, but finds his way of speaking provocative. He asks him if he has any money. Damien pulls out a bag full of gold coins and asks if this is what he meant. After a short silence, the hero smiles and gives a nod of approval, suddenly declaring that they are now friends. He puts his arm around the stunned Damien, telling him that if he says they are friends, then they are, and friends share what they have. He then excitedly pulls him along to find food to fill their stomachs. Damien asks his new friend what he has to share, to which the hero replies that he has a friend, referring to Damien himself. After they had a good meal and a bath, the hero feels refreshed. He sees Damien wandering around the place, which seems to be a house above the restaurant. Damien explains that it's the first time he's seen a place like this because he always slept outside. Damien suddenly mentions that he doesn't have a father. The hero jokes that he has a father, and they get into a childish argument that ends with the hero wondering why they are trying to compete in this matter. Then he asks him about his mother. Damien looks around and innocently replies that she is not here. The hero decides to assess the situation better. The hero asks Damien how long he has been alone. Damien thinks for a moment, and then replies that since he ran away from home, he has slept 10 times. The hero begins to analyze this new piece of information, wondering if Damien is a runaway and being chased, and whether sleeping 10 times means that 10 days have passed. Damien explains that he can sleep twice a day, including naps, so the total number of times he has slept is 10. The hero deduces that Damien has been on the run for about 3 or 4 days. But he becomes even more confused when Damien adds that he hasn't taken a nap since he ran away, confirming to himself that he is completely insane from the roots. The hero begins to plan for the future. He sees an opportunity in having Damien with him in the black and white zone, where he can act as his guardian and build a relationship with the Blandu family. This relationship could be useful in the future when he confronts the Deculin family again, plus the homes of nobles contain many of the books he needs to achieve his dream. But before thinking about long-term plans, he decides he has an urgent matter to deal with first, which is the 57-layered grudge he feels towards the young man who hit him earlier. He tells Damien that he is going to lie down now and warns him not to disturb him, or there will be big trouble. Damien asks if he is going to do breathing exercises, and the hero confirms it, asking him to do the same when he's done, which Damien enthusiastically agrees to. The hero begins his meditation, remembering his past life where he relied on standard magical formulas given to fixers, which had clear limits. To overcome this, he had infiltrated many noble houses and stolen their techniques, nearly getting killed more than once. He learned various secret arts like knightly body strengthening, spirit arts, summoning, and alchemy. But he remembers that all these techniques were not enough against the catastrophic power he faced from the head of the Deculin family right before his death. Therefore, this time he decides to learn the foundational art of the Deculin family itself, the art of the celestial source. It is the origin of all Deculin techniques and capable of harmonizing with all types of mana. And luckily, he had memorized it for research purposes in his past life. When he begins to activate the breathing technique, he feels an intense heat like lava flowing through his body. He discovers the presence of impurities in his mana circuits, which surprises him. To get rid of them, he resorts to a mysterious and secret power known as the mana shower, a technique used only by elite mages from noble families to purify their direct lineage. After the process is finished, he wakes up and wonders how much time has passed. More importantly, he finds that his mana circuits are now clean and his mana has been purified, perhaps to a higher level of purity than even in his past life. Despite this significant improvement, he realizes that defeating Deculin still seems like an impossible task, even if he were born 100 times. However, his chances have improved, and as a man who never gives up, even against near-impossible odds. The next day, Damien wakes up from his sleep to find that his hair has turned brown, which surprises him. The hero had secretly changed Damien's platinum blonde hair color and his clothes so that the Blandu family wouldn't recognize him. After the final step of the disguise was complete, Damien asks his friend what they will do now. The hero announces that they are going to crack some heads. As the young man who had previously hit the hero was walking after a nap, he was surprised to see the hero again, but this time he was clean and accompanied by another child. He angrily asked him where he had been wandering and about his clean appearance, then noticed his companion Damien, who, from his clothes, seemed to have money. Suddenly, the hero delivered a powerful punch that knocked him to the ground. He then calmly told him that just remembering his face was enough, and announced that his score with him would start at 123 hits. 2 young men in the area heard a commotion and went to check it out, and a large group of youths gathered. Everyone was surprised to see the youngest and what he was doing. The hero smiled slyly. All the faces were familiar to him, and he decided to see how far he could go this time. A violent brawl began, and he beat them down one by one. As the hero displayed superior combat skills, striking his opponents with fists enveloped in magical energy, Damien watched in awe, impressed by his new friend's speed and power. The hero taught Damien that in such situations, he should describe what he sees as super cool, which Damien repeated enthusiastically with sparkling eyes. Damien approached the first young man and offered to heal his injuries. The hero then grabbed him and asked how many hits he had taken so far, picked up a wooden stick from the ground, and then spanked the boy hard on his behind with it, asking him again how many hits he had taken so far, but the terrified young man stuttered and forgot the number. Here, the hero turned to Damien, his friend, and told him it was his turn. Damien happily began to use the touch of healing on the injured young man, who was screaming from both pain and fear, begging him to stop. The hero told him that his score wasn't settled yet, and that he had to receive another 20 hits, which made the young man scream and panic even more, calling the hero and Damien devils. After the disciplinary session was over, one of the young men approached the hero respectfully and said, "Good work, sir." The hero was proud of himself. The task of distributing 2,000 hits at a rate of 100 hits per person was a new challenge even for him. The exhausted youths asked for permission to leave, and the hero allowed them to. But one of them hesitantly explained that this was their home, so they couldn't leave. The hero's expression changed, and he said this was a small problem. Faced with this veiled threat, the youths quickly said that they would be the ones to leave, and they fled from their home. As the hero watched them flee, he thought that he was now homeless. But suddenly he felt someone approaching from a distance. This person was fast and stealthy, and possessed the distinct aura of a professional fixer. The hero concluded that they were most likely being pursued. He believes the Blandu family found him faster than he expected, and worries because he has very little mana left after the fight and the purification process he underwent. He realizes his current state doesn't allow him to use spells or fight physically, but he remembers his true identity as an experienced fixer. He recalls that even in his past life, he never had an abundance of magic and always faced such difficult situations, so it's nothing new to him. He begins to gather all his remaining mana. He compresses the mana he has gathered, believing it will be enough for one attack. He knows he has only one chance to survive this situation. When the pursuer arrives, it turns out he is not an enemy, but an elderly man who calls Damien young master. The man introduces himself as Alfred, looking extremely relieved to have found Damien, expressing the great anxiety that had kept him from sleeping. Damien flatly refuses to go back, screaming that he will never return and that Alfred must kill him first, while the butler tries to calm him down and persuade him to return. The hero realizes that Damien's escape from his family was nothing more than a little boy running away from home. Alfred, the butler of the Blandu family, apologizes to the hero for the scene and formally introduces himself. The hero responds by introducing himself as Aster. Alfred notices that young Master Damien seems very fond of Aster and invites him to accompany them to the Blandu family home. The hero is suspicious of their intentions, as it's well known that noble families despise commoners, but he can't understand their true motive for this invitation. He decides to accept the invitation, as it aligns with his original plan to form a relationship with the Blandu family, who control the entrance to the city of Hazen, where the Zenith Academy and its unparalleled library are located. Since his goal is to build a great library, he sees that visiting their library will be beneficial. He accepts the invitation, considering it just a small detour on his path to achieving his dream. The hero turns to Damien and cheerfully suggests they go see if the Blandu family's food is any good. They arrive at the majestic Blandu family mansion. The hero considers this his first official visit to the Blandu mansion. Alfred tells them that it's late and they should rest, then hands them over to a maid named Lassie. When Lassie tries to lead Damien away, the child panics at her sharp gaze and starts screaming and apologizing to her. Elsewhere in the mansion, the sound of a door opening is heard. Someone, apparently the master of the mansion, asks Alfred where Damien is. The butler replies that he was found in the 7th black and white zone and is on his way back. It turns out to be a lady, and she unleashes an angry magical attack that causes an explosion. She asks frantically if Damien is all right and threatens dire consequences if any harm has come to him. Alfred calmly asks her to calm down and listen to his report. After she listens to the report, the lady feels great relief. Alfred comments to himself that this is lucky for the lady, and lucky for anyone who might have harmed the young master. He remembers that this lady was once known by the title Blood Witch. He thinks that given her fierce nature, especially when it comes to her son, it's fortunate the situation ended this way. The lady thanks him for his hard work. Alfred tells her he was just doing his duty, but adds that there is something unusual about the matter, which piques her curiosity. Alfred talks about the new friend Damien has made, who is named Aster. He tells the lady that Aster had sensed his presence and prepared countermeasures even before he appeared before him. He adds that when they met, Aster was holding a mana bullet, a form of compressed magic ready for an attack. The lady is impressed by this, describing Aster's talent as remarkable for a boy from the black and white zone. Based on this talent, Alfred asks the lady to grant him a favor. In a later scene, Alfred stands before the hero and makes him a surprising offer to become his successor. Alfred seems confident that the hero will not refuse. He explains to him that such an opportunity for a rat from the black and white zone means obtaining wealth and honor, but the hero responds impolitely that he is not interested. This shocks Alfred, who asks if he heard him correctly. Damien interrupts the scene by asking the meaning of the word his friend muttered. The hero politely declines the offer, expressing his deep gratitude for being considered as the butler's successor, but he prefers things to stay as they are now. Alfred interprets this refusal as arrogance, believing that the hero, being a talented orphan who mastered magic on his own, sees himself as a great person. He then begins to lecture the hero, saying that he understands him because he too was born into an ordinary family and was arrogant in his youth before realizing the world was vast. Annoyance shows on the hero's face as he thinks about how trivial this talk is. But Alfred continues his lecture, explaining that the hero might think he can do anything and conquer the world, but things don't work that way. The hero tries to suppress his anger, while Alfred compares him to goblins of the valleys, creatures that grow up in a protected environment and are unaware of the real dangers of the world. The hero responds in his mind that if he were a goblin, he would probably be a wyvern by now, indicating that he is far from naive or weak. Alfred becomes more intense, declaring that since the hero knows nothing, he will personally teach him how vast and terrifying the world is. Alfred opens the doors to a large hall, where many young trainee butlers are lined up to greet him. Alfred asks the hero for his opinion, pointing out that these young men are talents of the Blandu family, all around his age, and that he can surely feel their skills. The hero watches them quietly and admits to himself that the talents of Blandu are indeed impressive. He notes that it's hard to believe they are just teenagers with this level of refinement, as their aura fills the entire place. But he looks into their eyes and thinks sarcastically, there were goblins here, meaning they are nothing compared to what he has faced. Alfred asks again if he will accept his offer, promising him that he can shine like these children, and even more so. The hero simply replies that he doesn't like to shine, which provokes Alfred. One of the trainees named Winster steps forward and addresses the head butler. Winster tells Alfred with a sarcastic smile that if this boy had truly felt anything, he would never have refused his offer. And since he refused, it means he has not yet realized the true value of the position or the talent present in the hall. Winster volunteers to give the hero a small glimpse of real magic, proposing a training duel. Alfred finds the idea arrogant, but he agrees to it. Alfred suggests that the hero have a quick duel with Winster. The hero realizes he has become a thorn in their side. He understands that they see him as just a lucky stray dog who found his way inside. The hero agrees to the duel, but asks to choose his opponents himself, which Alfred allows. The hero points to Winster and 4 other trainees. He announces that he will face all 5 of them at once, which shocks them. He scoffs at them, saying they should just die if they are scared. Alfred laughs, impressed, declaring that this is the spirit his successor should have. But he warns him that his words could be considered an insult to the Blandu family and asks if he is prepared to take responsibility, to which he confidently replies that he will. Alfred sets the terms of the duel. The hero must last for exactly 1 minute. If he succeeds, he will receive a gift. If he fails, he will be held accountable for his words. The hero realizes that being held accountable means being forced to become the next head butler and sees it as an attempt by Alfred to bind him, but he agrees to the terms. As they prepare for the duel, one of the trainers expresses his concern to Alfred that the duel might be too dangerous. Alfred replies that this danger is what makes it worthwhile, as he believes that breaking the boy's stubbornness is the only way for him to grow. The trainer of the 5 trainees is worried. He fears that injuring the young master's guest could lead to the end of his career. Meanwhile, Damien was watching the scene with the maid, Lassie. The trainer approaches him and begs him to stop the head butler, warning him that his friend is in grave danger. But Damien shows great excitement, which terrifies the trainer even more. Lassie intervenes and tells Damien that if he interferes, his mother will scold him, so Damien suppresses his anger. Alfred orders the hesitant trainer to begin the duel. The trainer thinks to himself that he did his best to object but must obey orders. Lassie tells Damien she will be back soon and asks him not to interfere. Damien smiles and tells her he understood. The trainer explains the rules of the duel, describing it as a turn-based spar. He scoffs to himself, considering it an annihilation battle and not just a spar. The trainer confirms that the duel is indeed an annihilation, where it continues until one side surrenders, while he retains the right to stop the match. Winster mocks the hero, calling him a stray dog blinded by luck, and vows to crush him and reveal his true nature. The trainer shouts, announcing the start of the duel, and one of the opponents rushes to attack the hero. As soon as the duel begins, the hero launches his attack on Winster, landing a powerful and direct blow to his chest, leaving him in a state of shock and pain. Winster screams, not believing what happened. Meanwhile, the hero announces that it seems he will be the one giving the lessons now, holding a mana bullet in his hand and declaring that the first lesson is that the smallest peppers are the hottest. Winster recognized the technique as just a basic manipulation of mana, an ineffective technique in combat. The hero presents his second lesson, which is not to judge people hastily, then unleashes the mana bullet. The bullet explodes with immense force, sending the 5 trainees flying into the air. The hero adds that the world is wide and bitter as he delivers a direct punch to Winster. He offers the defeated trainees to teach them these lessons and tells them to study them well. Winster shouts at him, calling him a madman, claiming that what he is using is not magic. The hero uses what is known as somatic magic, a style that integrates mana with hand-to-hand combat to take down his opponents. The trainer watches the scene in complete shock at the power he is witnessing, while Alfred watches the hero crush his opponents. Alfred analyzes the hero's technique, realizing that the mana bullet he used was compressed at least 3 or 4 times. He imagines that if he had taken a direct hit from that bullet when they first met, it would have been dangerous. He admires the hero's innate control over mana. He thinks that the way the hero defeated his opponents was terrifying. Suddenly, Alfred senses the presence of Lady Bianca and is stunned. Lady Bianca arrives with Lassie, bringing hope to the trainer who believes she has come to save them. The lady asks what happened, and Alfred hesitantly replies that they were conducting a simple test. The lady looks at the chaotic state and the injured trainees on the floor and asks sarcastically if this is what he calls a test. She orders Alfred to gather the trainees and remove them from the place for now. Then she asks Damien to return to his room. She also asks the hero to return to his room, and he thinks to himself, what a shame. The lady summons the trainer, Renbet, and fires him with a single word. She turns to Alfred, telling him that she understands his intentions, but he went too far this time. Alfred apologizes, admits he lost his temper, and is ready to accept any punishment. The lady changes the subject and asks for the details of what exactly happened in the duel, wondering if Damien had helped him. Alfred denies it, explaining that the hero was simply incredibly good at hitting. Alfred apologizes for his distraction and clarifies that the mana bullet he mentioned earlier was used again by the hero in this duel. But this time, he had compressed it an additional 3 or 4 times. The lady deduces that this means the hero's control over mana is excellent and admits she was very shocked, even though she didn't show it. She wonders in amazement if he had defeated 5 trainees with just 1 mana bullet, and Alfred confirms that he defeated them alone, noting that even highly trained mages find it difficult to manipulate raw mana instead of using spells. Lady Bianca asks Alfred about the offer he made to the boy, and he tells her that he flatly refused it. This refusal piques the lady's interest, and she decides she needs to reevaluate Aster, ordering him to be brought to her. The hero is summoned to meet Lady Bianca, who welcomes him and invites him to sit, while Damien sits beside her with his mouth full of food. The hero confirms that he heard she had summoned him, and the lady agrees but tells him there is another matter first. She presents him with a box, explaining that she heard Alfred had promised him a gift. The hero remembers Alfred's promise of a gift if he lasted for a minute, but he didn't expect the lady herself to prepare it so quickly. She asks him to open the box. The hero discovers that inside the box is a high-quality elixir, a precious item that is not even given in the Blandu family, except to recruits accepted into the top 5 magical squads. The hero is suspicious, knowing that such valuable gifts always come with hidden conditions. Lady Bianca reassures him, explaining that the elixir is a reward for helping Damien in the black and white zone, and it is also an apology for the duel incident. The hero asks her directly if drinking this elixir will bind him to the Blandu family, which she firmly denies. He then asks her if it is poisoned, and she assures him it is not. He asks for a final confirmation that there are absolutely no conditions, and the lady confirms it, telling him to take it without worry. The hero thanks her and accepts the gift. The hero considers the elixir an unexpected gain, but the lady tells him she has another proposal for him, and he thinks to himself, I knew it. The lady offers him a scholarship to attend the academy with Damien. She explains that Damien was supposed to start his studies last year, but he strongly opposed it, which led them to postpone it. and she never imagined he would run away from home to avoid going to the academy. The lady explains that she is asking for his help because Damien admires him, which Damien happily confirms, saying he would be happy to go if his friend was with him. The hero realizes that Lady Bianca is in a bind. Forcing Damien to go might push him to run away again, but she has no other way to change his mind. The hero sees this offer as a good opportunity. Attending the academy is great, and school connections are very valuable in a world that relies on family and regional ties. Although the offer is very good, he feels he is being drawn into the affairs of the Blandu family. He tells her he will think about it for now, and she agrees and asks him to inform her of his decision. Before he leaves, she asks him why he refused Alfred's offer to become his successor. The hero replies with a mysterious smile, "My knees are too precious to me," leaving the lady puzzled. Elsewhere, when Alfred hears this response, he is shocked and amazed by the boy's audacity. After obtaining the elixir, Aster sat contemplating as he absorbed its energy. Surprised by the immense increase in his mana despite having absorbed only 10% of the elixir, he wondered to himself if the reason for this effective absorption was the change that had occurred in his physical structure, turning it into the mark of fire. He noted that the absorption process was perfect. Unlike the usual process of absorbing an elixir, there was no energy loss or any lingering impurities, which made its effect stronger than he had anticipated. His thoughts then shifted to the offer he had received to join the academy. After deep consideration, he felt that his decision had already been made. He realized that there were many advantages to enrolling in the academy, the most important being that it would make it easier for him to find a sponsor to support him. However, despite these positives, he had a strong feeling that he was walking straight into a trap set for him. He decided to go for a walk to clear his thoughts. As he was about to leave, he was stopped by a young man with platinum hair who was waiting for him, and asked him directly if he was the person named Aster. Aster observed the young man's features and deduced from his platinum hair, which only Damien had in the direct family line, that the young man must be a relative from a side branch. Aster felt annoyed by the amount of trouble in this house and flatly denied having any connection to that name, which surprised the young man. The young man continued his sarcastic remarks, commenting on Aster's dull dark gray hair and his uncomfortable gaze, then added mockingly that all these traits resembled him perfectly, which angered Aster. Aster calmly replied that hair color can vary greatly depending on the lighting. He then put on a feigned innocent expression and asked the young man how these eyes could possibly be uncomfortable in any way. The young man was taken aback by his reaction, backed down, admitting that Aster's eyes did indeed look kind, and apologized for the misunderstanding before turning to leave. At that moment, Alfred, the head butler, rushed towards Aster and grabbed him, begging him to forgive the misunderstanding and telling him that he couldn't sleep all night because he hadn't been able to speak with him and clarify the matter. Alfred was thinking to himself resentfully that he shouldn't have to kneel like this just because he was the head butler, and that the whole thing was just a misunderstanding. The platinum-haired young man turned around again, having realized the truth, and shouted that he was right all along, and that the look in Aster's eyes, resembling that of a dead goblin, was not common. Aster calmly confirmed his identity. The young man became enraged, pointing his finger at him and accusing him of lying and acting with such insolence. The young man muttered a threat to kill him, but a sharp, silent glare from Alfred was enough to silence him. The young man retracted his threat and told Aster he would overlook it for now. However, he demanded that Aster come to the magic hall later so he could correct his bad behavior, to which Aster nonchalantly agreed. After the young man left, muttering threats, Alfred asked Aster if anything was wrong. Aster replied with a smile that there was nothing to worry about, thinking to himself that this situation came at the perfect time, because he wasn't in a good mood anyway. Then Aster turned to Alfred and called him by his official title, head butler, and asked if he could see the lady of the palace now. Lady Bianca welcomed Aster into her office, noting that he had requested a meeting very early in the morning and wondered if he had already finished considering her offer. With a confident smile, Aster confirmed his decision and informed her that he would be enrolling in the academy. Lady Bianca expressed her surprise at how quickly he had made his decision, but she was pleased, telling him that they should begin preparations as soon as possible. She told him to make himself comfortable in the meantime, and Aster thanked her for her hospitality and left the office. After Aster left, Alfred entered the office. Lady Bianca asked about the boy, and she happily informed the head butler that Aster had fortunately accepted the offer. Alfred couldn't hide his excitement, exclaiming that this was to be expected from a boy with such passion, and that flame burning in his eyes. Alfred enthusiastically continued to explain his plan to Lady Bianca, stating that the first semester would be fine since the family would cover his expenses, but he wondered how Aster would manage in the next semester. Alfred assumed it would be difficult for a vagrant from the gray zone to afford such high tuition fees, and predicted that Aster would become very anxious because he wished to continue his studies. At that crucial moment, a helping hand would appear, which would be none other than Alfred's personal sponsorship. Lady Bianca interrupted him, calmly telling him that he was making too much noise. Alfred immediately apologized for his outburst and excused himself to go to the kitchen as it was nearing mealtime. After he left, Lady Bianca pondered the matter. She understood Alfred's overwhelming happiness. After his offer to Aster had been repeatedly rejected, he had finally found an opportunity. However, she saw this academy proposal as a naive plan. She realized that the reason for Alfred's great confidence in his plan's success was that he himself had been lured by the former head butler using a similar method, and she felt sorry for him, calling him a poor soul in her thoughts. Meanwhile, Aster was walking, on his way to the magic hall, the place where that boy from the side branch, as he called him in his mind, was. Upon his arrival, he was met by a person wearing a hooded robe and carrying a candle, who asked him why he had come. Aster hesitated for a moment, realizing he didn't know the name of the young man he had come to meet. But the hooded figure seemed to have been expecting him, welcomed him, and asked him to follow. The hooded man led him to a door and told him he could enter from here. Before leaving, he gave him a cryptic warning, advising him to watch his head after opening the door. Aster opened the door and immediately understood the meaning of the warning as he found himself facing a flurry of flying papers. After the paper kicked up dust in his face, Aster found himself facing a platinum-haired young man who shook his hand and greeted him. The young man introduced himself as Henji von Blanco and asked Aster if he had come to see his younger brother. Aster realized with astonishment that the rude boy he had confronted earlier had called his older brother for help. At that moment, Aster's memory flashed back to his time as a fixer when he had infiltrated numerous magic academies, and he came away with an important observation about the characteristics of research mages, whom he called the pen pushers. The first trait that distinguished them was their thinning hair. They pulled it so much from overthinking that it stopped growing. Aster had divided this phenomenon into stages. In the first stage, they would try to deny their baldness by wearing their robes with the hood up. In the second stage, they would accept reality and reveal their thinning hair. In the third stage, they would shave their heads completely. And in the fourth and final stage, they would reach a point of desperation and start searching for magic that could achieve the impossible. Hair regrowth, something no one had yet succeeded in. But Henji was different. He began by offering a formal apology for his younger brother's behavior, explaining that he had gone too far and that he never imagined he would act so rudely to a guest of the young head of the family. As Henji spoke, Aster noticed that his hair was thick and that he was still young, making him an exception to the rule he had formed in his mind. While serving Aster tea, Aster asked him if he worked at a magic academy, and Henji revealed that he held the position of vice principal at one of them. This impressed Aster, who thought that a prestigious family like the Blancos wouldn't appoint someone to such a position based on lineage alone, meaning Henji must possess exceptional skills. Henji commented that Aster was a unique individual, different from the usual vagrants in the black and white zone. Aster laughed in agreement, but he felt uneasy inside. He thought that the task would have been much easier if Henji had met him with hostility, but instead he was smiling kindly. Aster felt a negative human chemistry between them, meaning they were two types of people who could never get along. Afterward, Henji congratulated Aster on his invitation to enroll in Xenian Academy. Aster thanked him, while Henji continued, describing it as a great opportunity and mentioning that he himself was a graduate of the 145th class. Aster wondered to himself if Henji was suddenly trying to build a school fellowship with him. Henji immediately apologized, saying he got a little excited when he heard the news of his enrollment and said something unnecessary, then suggested they get to the main point. Aster wondered what this main point was. Henji told him there was one thing he wanted to confirm first, and then asked him a direct and shocking question. Would he be willing to risk his life for a friend? Henji explained that the entire fate of the Blanco family was at stake. He then offered him a glowing book, promising that if he was willing to risk his life, he would give him this book. Aster was utterly shocked. He recognized the book immediately. It was the core secret of the Blanco family, the Tome of Healing Light. Meanwhile, in the palace garden filled with yellow flowers, Lady Bianca was tending to the flowers. Breathing a sigh of relief, she felt relieved that the problem of Damien's enrollment in the academy, which had been a major headache for her, had been resolved without any trouble, lifting a great burden from her shoulders. Her thoughts turned to Aster, whom she considered a very good friend to Damien. She acknowledged that his talent was very good, and as for his personality, she recalled Alfred's description of him as someone who could be rude or bold at times, but she saw that as normal for someone his age. What she liked most about him was his steady attitude, and his complete lack of flattery. even after learning about Damien's background and status. She concluded that his standing was different, and for that reason, he deserved to stay close to them. But for that very reason, she believed he would never belong anywhere, just like a free bird that cannot be caged. She thought that there were many ways to keep people close, and that she would have to consider these methods over time, for she was determined not to give up such a good talent for Damien's sake. Back in the magic hall, Aster was still in shock from Henji's offer to give him the family's secret tome. He wondered about the real motive behind this offer. He watched Henji's eyes and found them clear and transparent, so much so that he couldn't read what was on his mind. Aster thought that feelings, whether good or evil, usually show faintly in a person's eyes, but Henji was like a professional assassin, showing no emotion at all. He concluded from this that Henji was wearing a mask so elaborate that he might no longer know his true self. Henji warned him that he was not saying this lightly and asked him not to answer hastily just for the temptation of the reward before him. Aster replied that he would give him his answer. Inside, Aster felt the unease he had been feeling fade away after understanding Henji's nature. It was easy now. He realized they were both from the same muddy waters, so there was no need to feel uncomfortable. Aster told Henji that if he had something to ask, he would listen, explaining that if he thought he could do it, he would, and if he couldn't, he wouldn't. Henji became angry at his words and asked if he would listen even if his life was in danger just by hearing it, threatening that he might kill him if he listened and then refused. Aster looked at him defiantly and told him to go ahead and kill him, asking sarcastically if a man could die twice. But he quickly remembered to himself in embarrassment that he, personally, could die a second time. After a moment of silence, Henji released his energy to intimidate Aster. Henji tried to unleash his powerful aura to force Aster into submission, but Aster stood his ground, unfazed by Henji's threat. Henji smiled, admitting that he couldn't overcome Aster, and declared that he had passed the test. Then Henji told him that he would now speak to him comfortably, revealing the truth. He needed someone he could trust, but that person could not be a member of the Blanco family. Henji began to explain his situation, admitting that he initially had low expectations, believing that all vagrants from the Black and White Zone were alike, and that Damien, being young, might not have sharp judgment when it comes to people. However, what piqued his interest was that Damien's guardian, Lady Bianca, known for her exceptional love for him, kept a vagrant like Aster by his side, which led him to believe there must be something special about him. Then, by sheer coincidence, the fight between his younger brother and Aster occurred, providing him with a perfect and logical excuse to summon him for an interview. Aster asked if it was necessary for the vice principal of a magic academy to use his brother as an excuse to summon someone. Henji confirmed that Aster's suspicions were correct, explaining that the situation was difficult and prevented him from taking the first step himself. He quickly denied that it was a power struggle within the family, insisting that the Blanco family was very cohesive. Then he revealed the real reason. He was under surveillance by the Deculin family. When Aster asked him why, Henji decided to be completely honest, especially since Aster had previously shown indifference to death, but he reassured him that he had no intention of killing him. Henji revealed the shocking truth. He was currently researching the Deculin family's celestial source technique, and it seemed they had discovered his activities. He added that he had managed to obtain this technique, a secret known only to the Deculin lineage, through an unexpected route. Aster questioned Henji about how a man who was supposed to have died long ago was still alive, adding that if the Blanco family were investigating, their clear objective would be to find a way to counter him. Henji commented that the Deculin family was somewhat irrational. If he were only researching a countermeasure to their technique, they would have tried to kill him anyway, despite him being a vice principal. But he explained that it went beyond that. Initially, he only intended to look for a weakness, but he saw something else. He found in the celestial source technique, which is the origin of all the Deculin family secrets, a way to improve and develop this perfect secret itself, and he couldn't stop this research. He expressed his confidence that Aster, as someone interested in magic, would understand his feelings. Aster was stunned, realizing to himself that Henji wasn't just a little crazy, but absolutely and completely insane. How dare he conduct such research within his family's territory? Suddenly, Aster connected this revelation with events from his past life. The timing matched perfectly. The real reason the Deculin family secretly crushed the Blanco family was Henji's research into the new celestial source technique. That's why Baran risked the Deculin family's survival to eliminate the Blancos, because he saw from the beginning the immense potential in this enhanced technique, and this was the secret to his overwhelming power in their final battle. Henji noticed Aster's silence and asked if he regretted listening, admitting that the scale of the matter might be a bit overwhelming. Aster ignored that and returned to the original question. Why did Henji specifically seek him out? Henji explained that he had not yet informed his family of his research. He felt that the Dekulin family had planted a spy somewhere among them, but he couldn't identify who it was. Aster deduced that if the path through which Henji obtained the technique was traced, it was likely that the Dekulins had deliberately leaked a patch solution or an incomplete version of the countermeasure. Henji confirmed this with a laugh, adding that the moment he realized they were tracking him, he himself released a part of that incomplete formula to deceive them, because he didn't want to die either. Aster wondered why he didn't simply join the Dekulin family's side, as they would most likely welcome him. Henji replied vaguely that he had his personal reasons for not doing so. Henji explained to Aster that since he wasn't tied to his family, he needed him to do something behind their backs. He revealed that this research was in fact a collaborative effort, but his own part had reached a dead end. He asked him to take his thesis to Professor Baron at Xenian Academy, and promised that he would ensure he was well compensated. In return, he would grant him the Spell of Healing Light. Aster saw this offer as an invaluable opportunity, and decided to accept it. But he wanted to raise the stakes, so he proposed to take the Spell of Healing Light now as collateral, and when the new Celestial Source technique was completed later, he would take that as well. He justified this by saying it would make them true partners in the same boat, an all-or-nothing deal. Henji described him as truly audacious, but noted that his logic was simple. He wouldn't accept the job if the terms didn't suit him. After a moment of thought, Henji agreed to Aster's request. He said the name of the technique didn't matter, and since Aster hadn't learned the original technique, the new version wouldn't be useful to him right now anyway, but he promised to give it to him upon completion. However, Henji also set a condition of his own. He told Aster that until this thesis was fully completed, he might need his help again, and expressed his hope that Aster would support him then. Since they were in the same boat, it wasn't a big request. Aster agreed immediately, confirming that he would help as long as it concerned the thesis. As he was taking the papers, he jokingly added that he couldn't read. After Henji froze for a moment, Aster admitted he was kidding, prompting Henji to mutter in annoyance that Aster was rude and boring. Afterward, Aster asked about Professor Baron and whether he could be trusted. Henji laughed and told him that he and Baron had always competed for first and second place since their academy days, even when they became assistant professors. He added with a sigh that this rivalry ended as soon as he returned to the Blanco family. But he was always one step ahead of him. Aster thought to himself what a miserable world it was, for there was another madman like Henji at the academy. Later, in Aster's room, Damien was wondering why Aster was packing all these things into his subspace pouch, reminding him that he was told not to get caught. Aster noticed a letter sealed with red wax on top of a pile of books. He opened it to find it addressed to him, "To my dear Aster." Aster scoffed at the word dear. The letter was from Henji, telling him that these were the magical texts he must learn for his future, and that he had written the learning order at the bottom for him to follow diligently and acquire the intellect befitting his status. And he had signed it, "From your friend, Henji von Blanco." Aster looked at the piles of books and the detailed letter, admitting it was a truly wonderful gift. He realized that Henji was a true genius for his ability to organize a graded learning path from basic to advanced magic, but at the same time, he was also a madman. He smiled, commenting, "Not bad," then sat down and began to write something. He had started a book sponsors list for his future tower, and the first name on it was Henji von Blanco. He counted the books he had received, which numbered around 132, excluding the healing spell and the new technique's thesis. He thought that making the Spell of Healing Light available to the public in his tower was another matter, one he would discuss with Damien later. Aster remembered the image of Damien happily hugging a cat and calling him my friend, and Aster smiled to himself, considering it a privilege of friendship. His thoughts then returned to the 132 books Henji had given him. He realized they were not just scattered books, but a complete category of knowledge. With this collection, anyone wishing to learn magic could build a solid foundation for themselves. His perspective had changed. Previously, he had only thought about hoarding books in his tower. But now he realized that these books would become the true identity of the tower, a place that bestows knowledge upon all who seek it. Elsewhere, Henji was thinking about his meeting with Aster, considering it an unexpected gain. His initial plan was to hand over the thesis if Aster was useful, and to get rid of him if he wasn't. But now he found Aster to be an interesting person. Henji remembered Aster's bold response to his death threat, and how it wasn't just bravado. His eyes truly showed that he was indifferent to death. This made him different from the other pigs, as he called them in his mind, and he actually found it amusing. Henji felt that Aster was hiding a lot, which made things more exciting for him. He had finally found someone who stood in the same place and looked in the same direction, and what's more, who desired his results, a new feeling he had never experienced before. He wondered for a moment if Aster truly couldn't read, but he quickly dismissed the idea as impossible. When it was time to leave for the academy, the maid informed Aster that he would have to fill out some simple forms upon arrival, adding that both young Master Damien and Aster were exempt from the entrance exams. She informed them that they would now be official students of the academy. The lady commented that the new uniform suited Aster. He thanked her, and then they set off. Aster thought that prestigious families always receive special admission, and that this deal wasn't bad for him either. At the carriage, Damien and Lady Bianca were waiting for them. Damien called out to Aster excitedly, and urged him to hurry. Before he left, Lady Bianca spoke to Aster, asking him to take care of himself and expressing her hope that he would achieve what he wanted because this was a great opportunity. Aster thanked her and smiled. As the carriage made its way, Aster repeated Lady Bianca's words in his mind. What I want. He resolved to himself that he would of course get it. He thought of Xenion, the greatest academy on the eastern continent, where countless sponsors awaited him, and he intended to acquire them all. With a confident smile, he looked forward to his new destination, thinking, just you wait, colleagues, here I come. During his journey in the carriage, Aster immersed himself in reading the books Henji had given him, and he truly realized that Henji was a remarkable magical researcher. He thought that the basic principles of magic are simple, but their interpretations can vary endlessly. He took water as an example. For some, it is the water of life, and for others it is a catastrophic flood. It was just a matter of perspective. He realized that every great family had developed its unique path in magic, based on its own viewpoint of the same principle. After finishing all the magical texts in his pouch, Aster came to an important realization. He discovered that the curriculum prepared by Henji was directly linked to the celestial principles of the Deculan family. His thoughts were interrupted by Damien's enthusiastic voice calling him my friend and telling him to look, announcing that they had finally arrived. Aster looked out the window to see the imposing building of Xenion Academy before him. The accompanying lady told them that the carriage journey ended here. She explained that, following the teachings of the wise first headmaster, all students on their enrollment day must enter the academy on foot, regardless of their status. She wished them luck at the ceremony and hoped they would gain great wisdom. Then she parted from them. As soon as they started walking, Damien grabbed Aster's arm, urging him to hurry. He told him worriedly that Lancy, the accompanying lady, said that if they were late for the entrance ceremony, they might not find any seats left. Aster found this strange and considered it nonsense, as an entrance ceremony is not a village theater based on a first-come, first-served basis. But he then realized that Lancy probably said that as bait to keep Damien from slacking off, so he decided to let it go this time. When they entered the large hall, they found it crowded with students. Damien expressed his admiration for the large number of people, and said that Lancy was right, and if they had been any later, they wouldn't have found seats. Aster denied this in his mind, as he pulled out a small piece of paper to see their assigned seat numbers, Class M3, seats 11 and 12. But Damien pointed to some empty seats and asked if they could sit there, afraid they wouldn't get any seats at all. But Aster told him to wait a bit. Then Aster wondered in surprise, is this the same person who didn't even want to come to the academy? And why is he so excited now? As Damien was heading to sit down, he accidentally bumped into another student with long gray hair who looked extremely annoyed. The large man asked Damien angrily, "What's the matter?" Aster rushed to help Damien up and asked if he was okay. Damien cheerfully replied from the floor that he was perfectly fine and wasn't hurt. He then apologized to the student he had bumped into, saying that he wasn't looking where he was going properly. As Aster and Damien were about to leave, the gray-haired student stopped them with a sharp voice. He turned angrily and asked Damien what had gotten on his clothes. "Saliva," Aster replied calmly. From the man's aura, Aster deduced that he must be from a noble family, and he figured that in such a situation, Damien would take the initiative to apologize and try to clean the man's clothes himself. Indeed, Damien began wiping the man's clothes, apologizing and enthusiastically shouting that he would clean them and make them shine brighter than before, which only angered the man more. Aster realized a fight was now inevitable. The man lost his temper and threw a punch at Damien, yelling at him to get out of his sight, "You fool." But before he could do anything else, Aster intervened and grabbed his fist tightly. Aster told his classmate that he thought he was making a mistake, and suggested he stop right there. The noble student angrily asked him who he was. Aster stood up for Damien and announced clearly that he was his friend. The student commented sarcastically that he saw a loyal friend in him, noting that few would take a beating for a friend, but he warned him that he would regret his choice this day. Aster sighed, thinking that his plan to make friends with his classmates on the first day had failed. He cracked his knuckles and decided to forget about friendship for now. It seemed his opponent preferred to settle things with his fists rather than words. The commotion attracted the attention of other students who gathered around, wondering what was happening. Someone recognized the larger young man and said he looked like he was from the Dolanvi family lineage, but they didn't recognize the others. The onlookers began to wonder who would win, with most favoring Dolanvi, as they had heard that a new student from their family this year was supposed to be amazing. At that moment, a student who appeared to have authority pushed through the crowd, scolding them for standing by and watching as a fight was about to start. Someone hesitantly asked if they should stop them, but the student with authority flatly refused. Instead, he ordered the others to make way for them, and asked the gray-haired boy, being a mage, to set up a barrier around the area. The situation turned into a spectacle, and students began placing bets on the winner, with many cheering for Hexter, the name of the student from the Dolanvi family. Aster watched the scene with a slight smile. Hexter stepped forward and introduced himself as the second son of the proud Dolanvi family, and asked for Aster's name. Aster replied that, unlike him, he did not come from any great lineage, and that he should just consider him a passerby. Hexter smiled sarcastically, saying that not being from a noble family didn't matter, but that this small arena must be a handicap for a mage. Then, out of generosity as he claimed, he allowed Aster to make the first move. Aster found the whole situation utterly ridiculous. Aster mocked Hexter, saying that for someone who hates talking, he sure has a long tongue, and then asked if he was scared. This comment enraged Hexter and drove him to attack, beginning a fierce battle where Hexter threw a powerful punch at him. Aster wanted to add another observation, pointing out that there were two strong people, not just Hexter. Hexter was confident in his ability to withstand any magic student's punch, but he was shocked by the weight of Aster's punch when it hit him, wondering how his fist could be so powerful, and called Aster a scoundrel. While Hexter was trying to process Aster's unexpected strength, he was surprised by a healing spell being cast on him. It turned out that Damien was the one who cast the healing spell, but he couldn't understand why Damien was healing his friend's opponent. Aster muttered that noble families were truly on another level. He took advantage of Hexter's distraction and landed another punch, scolding him for letting his focus wander. Hexter found himself in a surreal situation. One person was hitting him hard, and the other was healing him at the same time, while Damien was laughing hysterically as he cast his spells. Hexter felt his heart pound violently, called them madmen in his mind, and wished he would just lose consciousness to end this nightmare. He wondered to himself, "Am I scared?" The crowd started yelling at Hexter, asking what he was doing and telling him not to back down. They cheered for him, reminding him that he was the pride of the Dolanvi family, the star of the Eastern continent, and the hope of all martial artists. They demanded he end it quickly and not prolong the fight. Faced with these insults, Hexter exploded with rage, screaming how a mere mage dared to look down on him with such contempt, and threw a punch at Aster, but the other dodged it. He gathered all his energy and unleashed his strongest attack, launching an assault that caused a deafening explosion. The crowd finally cheered, declaring that this was the Hexter they knew. Hexter felt his punch hit its target directly, but he wondered in confusion, why did the blow feel so light? And in a shocking moment, he saw Aster flying through the air. Aster landed skillfully on the ground, then slowly got up, dusting off his clothes. Hexter let out a furious scream of frustration. Aster watched him calmly as he lunged at him again, thinking about the situation. He had noticed that Damien kept healing Hexter, and he realized that to end this fight, he would need a single knockout blow to render him unconscious. Aster decided to use a special technique he had developed with his comrades in his past life. This technique relies on drawing energy from the collision of mana particles. It is neither a martial art nor magic in the traditional sense, but a pure technique born from the very properties of mana itself. He called this style the collision style. Aster unleashed his attack, which created a powerful flash of blue light. The spectators were shocked by the intensity of the scene, wondering in amazement what they were seeing. The thick dust from the attack obscured the outcome of the battle. The spectators stood in eager anticipation of the final result. Aster raised his hands, declaring his victory, then shouted, "Cheers!" Aster asked the spectators to raise their voices louder, and their response came in successive cheers, excited reactions, and a roar that filled the place, expressing their astonishment at this violent and thrilling fight. Those who had bet on Aster celebrated their unexpected win. Damien ran towards Aster, shouting excitedly, "We did it!" To which Aster calmly replied, "Yes." Aster looked at the jubilant crowd and thought that they should stop acting so naive. Meanwhile, a nobleman and his companion were watching the scene with disgust, describing a magic student fighting in such a way as extremely vulgar. Suddenly, an angry man who appeared to be an academy official pushed his way through the students, yelling and demanding that they move away. He asked with intense anger who dared to start a fight on the first day of the entrance ceremony, and threatened to drag everyone away if they didn't move immediately. Astor thought that he had caused a big scene, but he wasn't worried. After all, he was a fixer with many ways to escape, and everyone had enjoyed themselves. But before he could do anything, Damien stepped forward, pulling Astor with him, and shouted loudly that the others were not the culprits, but they were. He pointed to himself and Astor to get the official's attention. The angry official turned towards them, while Hexter lay unconscious on the ground in the background, and Damien confirmed again, "Yes, sir, it was us." After the grand spectacle and the chaos they had caused, Astor and Damien were immediately summoned by a grim-faced academy official. Inside his stern office, the official asked them in a serious tone if they would admit to their actions honestly and without any attempt at evasion. Due to their forthright confession and their refusal to deny the incident, coupled with the fact that the other student had not suffered any serious harm that would warrant harsh measures, the official reluctantly decided to overlook the matter this time. However, before letting them go, he gave them a sharp, scrutinizing look, followed by a clear warning that he would be keeping them under his close watch for the duration of their time at the academy. After leaving the tense office, Astor felt a great sense of relief, breathing a sigh of relief, as the official entrance ceremony had not yet begun, meaning they hadn't missed anything important. As they entered the grand hall, crowded with new students, their presence caught the attention of the attendees, who began to whisper among themselves with curious glances. Some wondered how a boy with Astor's frail build could defeat a seasoned martial artist, and how mages even fought in such a direct manner. Damien was thrilled by this sudden fame they had gained, and waved enthusiastically to everyone, considering them celebrities on their very first day. But Astor, who preferred quiet, calmly asked him to stop waving and drawing attention. Astor spotted their vacant seats and pointed to them silently. Damien was overjoyed when he realized their friends had saved them seats, believing that friends were the true treasure in this life, which Astor reluctantly agreed to with a faint smile. The entrance ceremony began with a lengthy and detailed speech from the academy's headmaster. The speech was so long and tedious that Astor remarked to himself on the headmaster's incredible stamina to speak for so long without stopping or feeling bored. Damien couldn't withstand the barrage of words and gradually began to doze off, drooling on Astor's shoulder. Annoyed, Astor gently adjusted Damien's clothes, woke him up, and then wiped the drool from his mouth so no one would notice. Suddenly and unexpectedly, an assistant interrupted the headmaster's speech to inform him of an urgent and important matter that required his immediate presence elsewhere. The headmaster wondered to himself what could possibly be more important than the annual entrance ceremony, but after listening to the assistant's whisper in his ear, he apologized to the students and announced that an urgent and serious matter required his immediate attention. The headmaster hastily concluded his speech and left the stage with quick, worried steps. After the headmaster's abrupt departure, a woman with fiery orange hair stepped onto the stage, capturing the attention of all attendees with her strong, majestic presence. Everyone turned their attention to the woman, their faces showing signs of awe and reverence at her imposing figure that terrified and silenced them in their places. She introduced herself in a firm, clear voice as Jira and explained that she would be managing the remainder of the entrance ceremony due to an unforeseen emergency that prevented the headmaster from finishing his speech. She announced the start of the new student oath and invited the representative of the magic department, the young Dahlia de Denain, to come to the stage. The mention of the name Denain sparked a wave of whispers among the students, who were surprised that a member of such a powerful and influential family had taken the entrance exam like any ordinary student. One student wondered curiously if her skills were weak, but another, more informed student replied that she was the third daughter of the head of the family, and it was inconceivable that the prestigious Denain family would allow her to take the exam if she were indeed weak. Astor recognized Dahlia immediately. He began to think about her family's prestigious status. If the Deculin family was the undisputed first in the arts of magic on the eastern continent, then the Denain family was a close second in power and influence. Dahlia was considered the hope and future of her family. Astor remembered that she was exceptionally strong and had helped him a great deal in the past, after he retired from his work as a fixer. But he mused that their relationship was never that of a savior and a victim, but more like partners in crime, sharing secrets and goals. Astor smiled, expressing his sincere joy at seeing her here as an ambitious new student. After that, Jira invited the representative of the martial arts department, a young man named Pola, to come forward. Aster noticed that no family name was mentioned for him, which clearly meant he was not from a noble or prominent family. He thought that this, in addition to his earlier defeat of Hexter, must be causing resentment and anger among the arrogant noble family. After the new student oath was finished, it was officially declared complete. Then Jira announced that she would now introduce the professors for the 172nd class and ask them to come up on stage one by one. Meanwhile, Aster felt that Dahlia was staring directly at him with an enigmatic gaze and wondered if he was imagining it because of their shared memories. But he quickly dismissed the thought as unimportant for the time being. As the professors were ascending the stage, Dahlia suddenly stumbled and fell in an awkward way that drew some stifled laughter. The professors came forward and introduced themselves one by one, each possessing a special prestige and status. Aster recognized one of the professors. It was Professor Barron, whom Hengi had told him about before, and he wondered why he was appearing so late in the ceremony. Barron stepped forward and introduced himself in a deep voice as the teacher for the Fundamental Principles of Magic course. Aster was surprised. He had expected someone who looked and acted like Hengi, but Barron seemed completely different from what he had imagined. However, he reminded himself that Hengi's social mask was extremely well crafted, so he shouldn't be quick to judge things by their outward appearance. Jira announced the end of the professor introductions, and thus the end of the entire entrance ceremony, and she asked the students to follow their designated supervisors to their student dormitory. Aster woke up Damien, who had fallen into a deep sleep again, and the latter asked in surprise if the ceremony was already over so quickly. Aster jokingly told him that he had been caught sleeping and expelled from the academy, and that he should now pack his things and go home. Damien panicked and started screaming and crying, completely believing the prank. Aster walked towards his dorm, thinking to himself how Damien could scream so dramatically over a simple little joke. He reached his room, noticing it was on the top floor with a good view. He entered the room and was impressed by its quality and organization. It was better than he had expected. He found some basic daily necessities on his desk and concluded that the academy provided the same items to all students without distinction, so that no one could reveal another's social status through their trivial belonging. He expected that everyone would be able to bring their own personal property later in the semester. Then he saw his roommate, whom he immediately knew was Pola, the representative of the martial arts department. Aster noticed that Pola did not look happy at all to see him. In fact, his face was grim. Pola told him coldly that he didn't care what Aster did in the room, but he laid down one strict rule. Neither of them was to interfere in the other's affairs, and that included talking. Starting from that moment, Pola asked in a clear, threatening tone if he understood the rule. Aster looked at him calmly, thinking to himself, "Look at this arrogant guy." Pola was annoyed by his silence and angrily asked him why he wasn't responding. At that moment, Aster thought that Pola was the top student in the martial arts department and wondered about his true strength and what was making him so tense. Suddenly, and without any warning, Aster lunged at Pola in a swift, surprising move. Pola drew his sword in a fury, shouting at Aster and demanding to know what he thought he was doing with this sudden attack. Aster secretly watched his movement and was impressed. He noted the masterful way he held and drew his sword without hitting anything around him in the cramped room, admitting to himself that his combat level was not bad at all. Their tense confrontation was interrupted by the voice of Damien, who appeared at the door and ordered Aster to come out of the room immediately because he had come to visit. Aster grabbed Pola, who was about to leave while muttering angrily, and the latter told him that he was leaving and would not stay in this room. Aster calmly replied that he didn't mind that at all, but in return, he asked him not to complain later even if he decided to sing loudly until midnight, and asked if they had an agreement on this condition. Outside, Damien was waiting impatiently for Aster, calling out enthusiastically, "My friend." When they met, Damien curiously asked about the identity of Aster's angry-looking roommate, to which Aster simply replied that he didn't know. Damien was surprised how his friend didn't know his roommate's name, so Aster explained that he wouldn't have recognized him anyway, as he had been unconscious for most of the ceremony. Damien excitedly suggested that they explore the academy grounds together. Lancy had told him that there were many tourist attractions and beautiful sights, and she had made him promise to take Aster on an exploratory tour on the first day. Aster thought that Xenon Academy was indeed huge and concluded that Lancy wanted Damien and himself to learn the layout of the place well so they wouldn't get lost in the future. Aster agreed to the idea, considering it might not be a bad and could be useful. But he suddenly felt a slight tingle, a strange sensation his trained senses began to pick up, one he knew well from his past life. It was the presence of fixers, those stealthy assassins also known as running demons. Aster decided to use this tour to see how many of them were around, and urged Damien to hurry up and wander around the place with feigned enthusiasm. Damien was mesmerized by the stunning views around him, shouting with childish admiration, especially when he saw a large, beautiful lake, commenting that there was nothing like it in his desert homeland. Aster felt exhausted as if he were babysitting a small child and realized this was Lancey's plan to push him into this tiring situation, but he vowed to himself that he would always repay this debt to her. Aster jokingly replied to Damien that he should ask them to build a private lake for him, and when Damien was surprised by this suggestion, he simply explained that he just had to dig a big hole and fill it with water. Damien got excited about the idea and decided he would have them build him one bigger and wider than this one. Aster asked him what they should name the new lake, and Damien suggested the name Blood, Sweat, and Tears, which Aster found deeply amusing for its strangeness. When Damien saw a magnificent and exquisitely carved statue, Aster repeated the same joke about asking to have it built and named. When he saw a beautiful dragon as well, Lancey, somewhere far away, suddenly felt a shiver run down her spine without knowing the clear reason for it. Aster decided that the tour time was over and that they should return to the dorm now. On their way back, Aster was silently counting the fixers in his mind. He had counted 7 of them so far and estimated that the total number was around 10 scattered throughout the academy. He pinpointed that their main gathering point and center of operations was the second magic hall, which was the same place where Professor Barron's laboratory was located. He confirmed to himself that their target was indeed Professor Barron. Aster deduced that the Deculin family had realized that Hengi had a partner helping him, and they were now monitoring Professor Barron as he was one of his few known acquaintances. Aster spotted one of the fixers hiding in the nearby bushes watching them. He smiled to himself, realizing they weren't watching him, but had attached themselves to their target, the professor, at the perfect and opportune moment. He looked up at the clear night sky and decided that tonight he would find out how much information they really knew about Hengi's plans. That night, under the cover of darkness, one of the fixers moved stealthily towards one of the academic building, and 2 masked fixers met inside the dark building. One asked the other where the rest of the team was, and he replied that they had gone ahead to the designated location. The newcomer explained that strict orders had come from high command to gather at the target's nest. When asked if he meant the primary or secondary target, he confirmed it was the secondary target. He added that they had received important intelligence that the precious item would be delivered to the secondary target at midnight tonight, and that they had managed to track the primary target, Hengi. The first fixer deduced that Hengi had finally made a move from his hiding place, and that their specific target among the secondary targets was Professor Barron. The other fixer panicked, asking about the single digits, the elite of the fixers, and how they were expected to breach the defenses of the monstrously powerful professors on their own. He insisted that to accomplish a mission of this danger, they needed at least number 1, or 2 or 3 of the elite. But his colleague told him that number 1 would not be coming, nor would the other elite. This news infuriated the second fixer, but his colleague revealed an unexpected surprise. Joining them on this mission would be Kalahin, the legendary fire demon. The fixer was shocked upon hearing the name. He knew that Kalahin was the vice captain of the Crimson Jewel Mage Corps of the Deculin family. He realized that Kalahin was a dangerous man who would burn everything in his path to complete the mission without hesitation, which meant that the command expected them to be prepared to die and sacrifice themselves. His colleague tried to calm him down, pointing out that it might not come to an open fight, as exposing a well-known and important mage like Kalahin on such a mission would be a great risk for the Deculin family. They agreed to move immediately, realizing that their slim chances of survival would improve the faster they gathered with the rest of the team. Meanwhile, Aster was watching quietly from his balcony, thinking about the important piece of information he had picked up. Midnight tonight. He remembered the name he had heard clearly, Kalahin. Aster recalled his memories of Kalahin, who had been at the peak of his power even in his previous life, after the Deculin family nearly destroyed itself in its grueling war against the Blancos. Kalahin remained loyal to the family even as it weakened and crumbled. Despite his danger now, Kalahin's true peak of power was after that devastating war, where he carved his name into the pages of history as the unstoppable fire demon of Deculin. Aster saw this as an irreplaceable opportunity. He had decided that he desperately needed to take something from Kalahin, as his flame was a secret art of the ancient Deculin arts, and the risk of facing him was definitely worth the reward. Aster realized that this was why the fixer who had been watching him suddenly retreated, and he considered it a precious catch that could not be missed. But one thing puzzled him greatly. The thesis they were looking for was with him. While they claimed it would be sent to Professor Barron, Aster was absolutely certain that his copy of the thesis was not a fake at all, and that their item could only mean this thesis, which meant there was a missing piece in the whole puzzle. Aster cleverly deduced that the thesis to be delivered tonight must be a fake and just a bait. Later that night, while Aster was pretending to be in a deep sleep, Pola began to prepare in silence, dressing in his black clothes and equipping himself with the necessary weapons for the upcoming mission. Pola glanced at Aster's bed and made sure he was completely asleep before leaving. Meanwhile, in Professor Baron's dark office, Baron was engrossed in writing at his desk. He suddenly sensed intruders and was filled with anger at the scum of Declan. He had tolerated them when they were watching him from a distance, but he could not accept the idea that they would dare to invade his territory with such insolence and audacity. Baron became aware of the intruder's presence as a masked figure slowly opened his office door to find him right in front of him. He recognized the person by his energy as a hired mercenary, but the intruder was surprised when the professor recognized him and revealed his identity. It was Pola himself. Baron calmly confronted Pola, advising him that if he wanted to hide next time, he should first learn to control his energy, as this was the most basic principle of stealth and infiltration. That is, if there would even be a next time. Baron realized that Hengi was behind all this, and that he had tried to smuggle the thesis behind Declan's back, but had fallen into the trap like a fool. But he quickly corrected himself. That cunning rascal Hengi would not fall into a trap so easily, and he wondered about his true goal in this complex play. Suddenly, a massive explosion completely destroyed the office wall, and a man with long red hair entered, greeting Professor Baron with a theatrical smile. He introduced himself as Kalahin, but dismissed the idea that a professor confined to his laboratory would have ever heard his name. Pola was shocked by this new and sudden visitor. Kalahin completely ignored Baron and pointed at Pola, saying that the sword he carried suggested he was a cheap mercenary. But Baron cut him off coldly, telling him that he had indeed never heard his name before. Baron ordered Kalahin to stop this nonsense and speak seriously. Baron added coldly that his foul stench alone was enough to make his nose rot, which surprised Kalahin, who was not used to such treatment. Kalahin burst out laughing, commenting that this was the first time anyone had treated him this way, and then decided to get straight to the point. Kalahin announced seriously that that man, pointing to Pola, would die tonight. And as for the professor, he might consider leaving him with one eye and one arm as a form of mercy. A fierce battle erupted immediately, with Baron standing in front of Pola to defend him, unleashing a massive wave of ice energy, which resulted in a large explosion that shook the foundations of the building. Pola was shocked by the immense power of the explosion. Baron told him that from now on, he would not see him as a student, but as a mercenary, and that he must protect his own life and rely on his skills. Pola agreed as he gripped his sword tightly, ready to fight to the death. Baron wondered to himself how no alarms had gone off in the academy after such a powerful and destructive explosion. Professor Baron concluded that the rats of Deculin must have concealed the entire area with a magical barrier to prevent the alarms from going off, and he wondered to himself if he should really trust this novice mercenary who looked nervous. On the opposite side, Kalahin noticed an envelope on the floor that reeked of the filth of the Blancos, as he described it. Kalahin saw that Baron would not peacefully hand over what he wanted, so he wondered what to do, then suggested with a wicked smile that they have some fun, and unleashed a massive fire attack that swept through the room. Baron sensed other intruder, and when he looked behind him, he saw a large group of fixers rushing towards the building they were in. The intensity of the battle escalated dramatically between Kalahin's scorching flame and the combined defensive and offensive abilities of Baron and Pola. Nearby, Aster was watching the scene from the shadows, thinking that things were finally starting to get serious. Aster put on his mask and hood, remembering the long time that had passed since he had acted not as Aster, but as Fixer Number 1. He looked at the distant explosions and decided it was time for his part in this play to begin. Aster raised his head to the sky and offered a sarcastic prayer to the moon to make him a righteous fixer for just this one day, then corrected himself, admitting that he had never been righteous on any day of his life. He then dashed at top speed towards the ongoing battle. In the midst of the battle, Kalahin mocked Pola, admitting that he was holding up impressively well for an unknown mercenary. Pola was panting from extreme exhaustion and felt resentful that he had survived the attacks thanks to a protection amulet his captain had given him, considering it a mere stroke of luck. At that moment, Baron told him to move back. Baron himself stepped forward to face Kalahin head-on, then turned to Pola and told him that he wasn't bad at all, and that perhaps he could trust him a little more than he had thought. Baron noticed the glowing sword in Pola's hand and asked if he was using enhancement magic to strengthen his attacks, then asked if he thought he could block more of Kalahin's fire attacks. Pola replied with determination and resolve that he would block them as much as necessary. It was no longer a matter of ability, but a matter of life and death, for if he failed, his fate was certain death. Calahin smiled as he watched them, commenting that a team consisting of a mage and a guard was indeed a strong team and posed a good challenge. He then launched a powerful and direct fire attack towards Pola, but the latter successfully and bravely blocked the attack. The fierce fight continued, with Pola acting as both guard and attacker simultaneously, while Baron blocked the magical attacks from the other fixers. Baron realized that, at this rate, he would only continue to retreat and defend without making any progress. Therefore, he decided that in this situation, he had to be more daring and take a risk. Baron explained that when the mana in nature is limited and two beings issue conflicting commands, they enter a fierce battle to control it. He then challenged Calahin directly, asking how much power he could take from him in a direct confrontation. Calahin realized that Baron wanted a direct struggle for power and magical authority, so he accepted the challenge, laughing loudly to see who was the stronger between them. Their blue and red energies collided in a massive and devastating explosion that completely destroyed the surrounding area. In the midst of this violent magical conflict, Pola was struggling to stand on his feet, cursing the situation he found himself in. He realized that both men were true monsters, and that there was no chance for him to intervene in their fight, wishing they had just fought each other from the beginning and ended it. The rest of the fixers were watching the violent magical whirlwind, commenting on how brutal and dangerous the fight was. Their leader ordered them to hold their positions and not to move, because rushing in now meant certain suicide, and he advised them to catch their breath as much as they could and wait for the right opportunity. Suddenly, one of the fixers was ambushed from the shadows. One of the fixers shouted a warning that an assassin had set a trap for them. It was Aster who pounced on him with lightning speed and headed straight for the heart of the battle, raging between Baron and Calahin. While Baron and Calahin were still engrossed in their struggle for control, Aster announced his arrival in a quiet yet terrifying voice. Both Calahin and Baron were surprised by Aster's sudden appearance out of nowhere, and Calahin was shocked and extremely angry. In an instant, Aster appeared directly in front of him and attacked without hesitation, declaring that this place would become his final grave. The attack pierced Calahin's defenses, and the latter felt that he would die if he did not act as quickly as possible. Calahin used a powerful fire spell to create distance between himself and Aster, then was thrown far away, coughing up a large amount of blood. But Aster emerged from the explosion without any visible damage and rushed towards Calahin again. Calahin realized in terror that his mana was beginning to reverse and rebel against him. The rest of the fixers seized the opportunity and moved quickly, in a desperate attempt to stop Aster from reaching Calahin. The injured Calahin quickly took out a potion to curb the backlash of his energy, wondering where someone with such monstrous strength as Aster had come from. Meanwhile, he was watching Aster's fighting style, and despite the situation, he was deeply impressed. He noted that his movements were perfect and flawless, and that his spells were precise and instantaneous. Calahin was surprised at himself, wondering if he was truly impressed by this mysterious man who had appeared so suddenly. Calahin unleashed his latent anger and began to form huge, glowing red magic circles. He shouted that he didn't know who this unknown intruder was, but he vowed to kill him and make him regret his interference. He launched a massive fire attack from his magic circles, hitting the fixers, who unfortunately found themselves in the path of the devastating blast. Aster was at the heart of this fiery attack, facing it steadily while wearing his feature-hiding mask. As the explosion swept through the entire area, engulfing everything in scorching flames,